Hello, and thanks for choosing to spend some time with Infinite Implications. I'm sorry I have to read some of this, but it's really hard what I want to say, and I want to get it right. My name is Dr. Ed Lundeen. I have my PhD in clinical psychology from the University of Arkansas. There's a variety of types of psychologists, and my type, clinical psychologists, tend to study mental health and mental illness, and we work in lots of kinds of settings doing many types of jobs. But the most common one is the one most people know. We do talk therapy with people who are unhappy, or anxious, or scared, or stuck, or confused. And that's what I do for a living. 5 days a week, between 8 and 11 hours most days, people come to me and we discuss their concerns. And there are lots of concerns of all different kinds I hear every day. And I'm one of an estimated 500,000 people who do this kind of work, just in the US alone. But we all know how much stress and unhappiness and worry there is in our everyday lives. And we know how much there is in the world, too. Oftentimes it's so much we just can't think or feel about it anymore, or we have to work hard to try and forget it. But we can't. It's always there, and whether we want it to or not, for most of us, this pain is hard to live with. Certainly in part because of my work, pain and suffering are nearly always at the forefront of my mind. When my patients and I do what we can, and often that's quite a lot, to ease personal hurts, it was long in my mind that what we were doing was good. It was simply not enough. For a long time, like many people, I've been searching for ways to help more people, to make even bigger leaps in pain reduction and the improvement of the human experience. So many years back, when I read a review of a book called The Beginning of Infinity in the New York Times, the review was written by David Albert. He's a philosophy professor in New York City. Hopefully someday I can meet him and thank him for his introduction to the book and its ideas that I believe will change lives. Dr. David Deutsch is the author of the book, and he's a physicist, mostly at Oxford in England, from what I can glean from the internet anyway. He published his book, The Beginning of Infinity, in 2011. When I read Dr. Albert's review, my summary was this. This is one complicated book, and it's not always clear what Dr. Deutsch means, but what he says sure seems important. After reading the book, and then rereading it 5 more times, I have to agree. So I owe a debt to Dr. Deutsch, a true freethinker and polymath, as well as to someone who seems to have influenced him, the now famous philosopher of science and life, Karl Popper. Together, I think they've begun to pave a road toward a kind of realistic and eternal optimism, a hope for the future that I have not heard before. I believe they've offered some answers to that nagging question of what more can be done to help in addition to seeing patients for talk therapy. How else can we address the concerns of pain and suffering and the future of the human condition in a way that will make a big difference? So the title of Dr. Deutsch's book actually says a good bit and sums up one of the central points of his thinking. Humans, and as far as we know right now, only humans, have reached the beginning of infinity. This means that humans, as a collective, have infinite potential for growth, creating knowledge, and maybe most importantly, the easing of human suffering. It also means that there are infinite problems to both create and solve. To quote Dr. Deutsch, problems are inevitable, problems are soluble. But first, how can we even know or believe that humans have reached this place, this beginning of infinity? Let's just note 3 examples. Again, thanks in large measure to Dr. Deutsch. 1. Numbers. We can count infinitely, forward or backward, and we can calculate using those numbers infinitely. This has opened us up to the world of math and physics, and these 2 fields have blossomed us into fields of human knowledge that, so we believe, or I believe, go on forever. Here's an easy way to think of this. Imagine the biggest number you can think of, then add 1 to it. You can do that infinitely. 2. Alphabets and languages. Because humans have developed a variety of letter systems that can be made into infinite combinations, we can always create new words. And those new words can define and describe new concepts and new explanations for the infinite amount of information there is to be discovered around us. Language also allows us to attempt infinitely to understand the experiences, thoughts, and feelings of others. Try this simple exercise. Create a word that no one has said before. It can be a word that defines something, or it could be a nonsense word. Then add another letter to that word. Again, you can do this infinitely. Number 3, music. Much like alphabets, we have systems of musical notes and rhythm patterns that can and will be combined to make endless new forms and works of music. And this is true not just of music, but of all the variety of arts. Poetry, painting, jewelry making, pottery, novels, and on and on. To think about music, imagine this. Listen to a song. At any point you like in the song, add a note or series of notes. You've made a different song. and you can do this infinitely with all art. From this point, hopefully you'll start to ponder these ideas. And the nice thing is, it doesn't matter how you consider what you just heard. It's certain that each person who thinks about what they just heard will find their own personal way to make sense of all this. There isn't any need to be concerned about whether you think or feel your way to what you heard, or more likely a combination of both. For a long time in history, this kind of distinction has created a good bit more suffering than it's helped. Some of you will hear the above and use rationality and thought-based systems to try and understand, and others might sense or feel the truth of what they have heard. Maybe some people will make sense of this using an idea of God or a Godhead to help understand. Any of these ways will work. There may be infinite paths to a sense of understanding and believing what you've just heard. To my mind, the beginning of infinity is open to anyone, no matter how they find their way. And if you want more motivation as to why you might want to continue thinking about this issue, here's a great quote from Karl Popper. "Optimism is a duty. The future is open. It is not predetermined. No one can predict it except by chance. We all contribute to determining it by what we do. We are all equally responsible for its success." In our next talk, I'll cover our first important implication of infinity, an idea I've called infinite economics. Thanks for coming this far.